We're here with a special guest tonight. And Janelle, before we dive too far in, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm real busy, but I'm doing pretty good.
Right on, right on. I hear you.
September started and so did everything else. So,
Yeah, it was July, and now it's almost October.
right. And Christmas and the New Year is right around the corner. No. I'm not wishing it away.
No.
Um, no, but I am really excited that we have Allison Tebo here with us tonight. Allison is an author of multiple books, most notably the Tales of Ambia series, which is a set of fairy tale retellings. And she is also the author of The Goblin and the Dancer, which is part of a Villains Ever After, which was a multi-author series that released a couple years ago. And most recently, Break the Beast, which is a Beowulf retelling and part of the Classic Retold series, which is another multi-author series that this one that she's actually heading up. So, hey, Allison, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Allison, I want to definitely dive into this multi-author series that's being released, about to be released. But for those readers who may not know you, what has your journey been into writing books and stories that you're sharing with the world?
Well, I started writing when I was about 10 years old,
Wow.
and our family has always been storytellers. Have our mom and her dad have read to us since, for as long as I can remember. We were always inventing our own stories, so it was natural to start writing at 10. But I didn't publish until I was 25, so it's been like 7, 8 years since then, and I've been publishing every year since then. But it took that long to finally have anything ready to be published, and it's just been a journey since then of seeking out. I've also been published in multiple magazines and anthologies, and just slowly building my publishing portfolio. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, but it's been an amazing journey though. But everything in my life, my whole family is dedicated to storytelling, so it's definitely a natural extension of my environment.
So when you say your whole family, because stories were a huge part of our lives growing up, whether it was watching movies as a family or reading at night as a family, that was a big part of why Janelle and myself, why we love stories so much. Tell me a little bit more about what that means when you say everyone in your family is storytellers.
Well, like I said, for as long as I can remember, my mom read aloud to us when we were very small. That was one of my very first memories, is my mom reading out loud to us. And then my dad would tell us stories. He's an amazing storyteller and recounting all of his adventures and all of the people he knows. And he has a lot of very interesting stories up his sleeve. So most of what our family would do most of the time, what we did for entertainment, is sit around and talk, just sit around the dinner table and tell each other stories or recount things that had happened. So I think that, and then as you said, watching growing up watching movies, that was another one of our family get-togethers. Is we'd sit together and pull the story apart and dissect it together and enjoy it together and savor it together. Listening to audiobooks on many road trips, doing our own radio dramas, doing our own movies. We actually made our own home movies when we were little, like most homeschoolers.
Are you sure we didn't grow up in
And
the same family?
yes,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it's
awesome.
pretty familiar homeschooling story, but it's pretty much every aspect of our lives had some element of stories.
That's awesome. And major props to your dad for making up stories. I have found that I enjoy reading to my kids. It's become kind of one of my favorite things every night. But when they ask for that, hey, tell us a story, like just make one up, that's incredibly difficult and
Yeah.
definitely
Well,
stretching.
that's actually more of my brother Grant, is the one
Really?
that can make up stories just right off the cuff. My dad is more of their real stories. He's had
Oh,
a
really?
very very adventurous, so you have to make anything. Brother Grant is the one that can literally just sit down 5 minutes later and just tell you an original story. It's wild. I'm very envious.
Yes. Well, and that's a great question because I am definitely in awe of you guys as authors because I can enjoy a story and I can pick it apart and enjoy like the details of it, but the time and effort and the process that goes into writing a short story, let alone a novel, is incredible. What is become your process for your writing? What are your inspirations? Do you write consistently, or how do you put together these stories that you're crafting?
Oh boy. I do have a consistent writing schedule, not so much lately, but because of other things have been going on in my life, but I usually write every single workday. And I carve out my mornings. Those are to do what I call free writing. So if I have an idea or I have an image and I just want to just sit down with a blank document, I like to have 10,000 words, just whatever's come to my mind, whether it's dialogue or descriptions or action scene or something like that. And then I'll sit down with a very brief outline and then start actually arranging that 10,000 words into its respective chapters and then start doing the very long process of pasting in and filling in all those very long blank spots. But that's actually the longer version of what I do with short stories. I do the same thing with short stories. I just don't write as much for the first chunk. I do like maybe 500 words and then start arranging it. I don't like having that blank page, so I like to have a little bit on there before I really buckle down and start writing.
So wait, are you saying you write 10,000 words a day?
Oh goodness, no. It's like I was thinking about the whole
Oh,
process
oh,
of
okay,
starting
okay.
a story.
I was gonna be really impressed.
No, I wish I did. I don't think I've ever done 10,000 a day. I've come, I don't know, maybe 6,000,
Wow,
7,000 a
that's
day,
awesome.
but not often. But no, I was just talking about process from the starting the story. I'd like to have like 10,000 words of just, extemporaneous material, and then I start actually arranging it to fit an outline. But no,
Oh, very cool.
I try to do at least 1,000 a day. I prefer 2,000, but
And do you just kind of pick one project and are you, man, focused on that one project until completion? Or do you, oh man, here's an idea that pops up that I'm going to revisit at some point? Or do you have multiple ideas that are constantly like maybe something will pop into your mind that, oh, I'm going to look at that when I'm done with this, or maybe nothing ever happens with it. But what about, do you have multiple things in the works at any one time?
I do like to have like two projects in the works at one time. So if I get stuck on one, I can swap to the other. It also often depends on what's happening. With Break the Beast was so all consuming, I couldn't do anything else. That I was solely focused on that. I couldn't write on anything else. I couldn't think about anything else. But that was a very odd exception. Most of the time, I like to have two projects that I can alternate between. I'm usually a pretty focused person, so I don't do a lot of plot bunny chasing, but um, I do. It is nice to have that alternating so that you can kind of rest from one story and you get a little dry or a little tired, and then just move between the two.
Very cool.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about Break the Beast. I'm curious just looking in from the outside. I feel like and it's new to me. Janelle, I know you have some experience with it, but these multi-author series, to me, the idea of writing always seems like a very kind of a lonely journey if you think about how long it takes to process something before you could share it with somebody. And you guys have kind of found a way to turn it into a team sport, it seems like. Obviously, still writing your own works. But tell me a little bit about the story coming out, Break the Beast, and then tell me a little bit about the series. What ties these stories together? What ties you guys as authors together? And I have more questions about it, but let's start with those ones.
Okay. So Break the Beast is a retelling of the Legend of Beowulf. It is set in a fantasy Anglo-Saxon inspired country. It's not really set in our world like the original tale is, but it is inspired by the Legend of Beowulf and is told from the perspective of the monster Grendel that Beowulf battles. So it's entirely from the monster's perspective, and it is now female instead of a male monster. And it's this epic redemption story, and it's definitely one of the most intense things I've ever written. It's very different from me, heavily inspired by things like the Legends of King Arthur, or my favorite author, Rosemary Sutcliffe, or even Lord of the Rings. And yeah, it's also the longest book I've ever written.
Really?
But it's one of my favorite stories of all. Yes, it is. It's like 70,000 words, which for me is quite long. I'm typically more on the short side, but it is definitely one of the most intense stories I've ever written, and definitely a sort of a loving salute to some of the authors that I grew up reading, such as Rosemary Sutcliffe or the collections of King Arthur and that kind of thing, full of noble heroes and heroic deeds. As far as a classic retold, that we're all connected by the theme of hope-filled fantasy. They're all retellings of classic literature, and they're all hope-filled fantasy, however that looks. We were all kind of a little tired, I think, of fantasy being overrun by grimdark and that sort of thing. So we wanted to do an alternative to that and try to infuse the genre with something a little more uplifting than we are seeing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For something like this, that's a retelling, and this would be a question even for you too, Janelle. Is it very research intensive, or is it, man, you just have a love for all of these materials, like you talk about, like even the Legend of Arthur? Is it like, oh, I'm just taking my passion and my years of reading in those stories, in those even those genres, and just pouring it into this story, or is there a lot of research that goes into, obviously? I don't know how close or how loose, but if you're retelling something, I'm just curious how much of it is researching and trying to build this world, or are you just so saturated with these stories and your love for them that it just kind of pours out of the page?
Janelle, do you want to answer that first? Do you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think my answer is yeah. I say yes to both of them because for one, as far as just my world, which is like a fantasy equivalent of an Anglo-Saxon England, I was so saturated in that because of practically memorizing some of these stories that I didn't do a lot of research in that respect. But as far as the Beowulf itself, I read through the entire text. I was underlining, I was taking lots of notes. I was researching the characters of Beowulf, researching areas that they thought were the real locations for Beowulf, because there's lots of speculation on where's the marsh that Grendel lives, where was this cave, all that sort of thing. So did a lot of research in the legend of Beowulf. But as far as just the actual setting and the world building, that was just trusting in the immersion process.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Because that answers that question. Chanel, your story, maybe tell us a little bit about your story, and just I'm curious on your answer for that. If it's are you doing a lot of research to tie in certain aspects of the story with the original, or is it just kind of poured out onto the page from your own experience with the story?
Yeah, so mine's a little different because I'm retelling Oliver Twist, and my book is called Steal the Morrow, and it's I've always loved the story of Oliver, but I'd never read the book before. And so when Allison was like, "Hey, do you wanna be a part of this?" I was like, "Yes," and immediately thought Oliver Twist. And I don't know why I thought that, because I mean, most people who know me know that I'm not a huge fan of Charles Dickens. I love his stories. I just can't read his books. I don't know. It's a writing style thing. But but I've always loved the story of Oliver Twist. I directed the play Oliver Twist when I was teaching. I grew up with Oliver the musical, and I knew that I had to retell this story. I also knew that I couldn't retell it based on the movies. So the first thing I did was I read the book, and still don't really love reading Dickens. My daughter is now actually listening to Oliver Twist for school, and I'm listening to it with her and realizing that I really like it in audio form a lot more. It's a lot more fun that way. But yeah, for me, I set the book in a world I'd already written. So my Turum Archive series, this story takes place in that same world, but like 100 years before the series starts. So the world was already built, and the story just kind of came together. Our dad kind of helped, like, I have to retell this story, and all I know is I want to save Nancy. And he was like, okay. An hour later, I had a full outline from him. So it's kind of his book. But yeah.
That's awesome. Allison, so this question would then be for you, and even both of you guys. But if someone were to ask, why classics retold? Why classics, and then why retellings? I'm curious if it's hey, I want to take my passion for this story and deliver it to an audience that may never otherwise have come across it. Or are there other reasons behind one, I guess, why classics, and then why retellings?
Yeah, that was a question just tacking on just a little bit to that, because I was going to ask
Oh,
that
did
question.
I
You
steal your
stole it from
question?
me. But I've actually you did steal my question.
I did.
It's
I
okay.
did.
It's good
It's a
though,
good
because I just
question.
have like just a little dovetail into it. It is a good question. But just that I did run into this recently where I was explaining to someone that I was retelling Oliver Twist, and they were like, well, why? Why retell a story that's already been told? And I kind of like didn't know how to answer. Like
Mm,
why retell a story?
very specific reason. My sister Tor, who was part of this collection, wrote the most amazing retelling of Shakespeare's Tempest. It is one of the most beautiful stories I've ever read, and I read it a couple of years ago, and I loved it. It's created this entire multi-author series, basically just to force my sister to publish this book,
That is an awesome reason.
which she's going to do in October. Largely done because I love her story so much. And so I had just finished doing a Villains of Her After. I had so much fun doing a multi-author series. It was so successful for me in so many ways that I thought, oh, I can do another multi-author series. I'll do it myself. And since it's a retelling of Shakespeare's Tempest, we'll just do classics. And also, I wanted to do something different from fairy tale retellings. I felt like there was a lot of fairy tale retellings, and actually this year there's like 4 new multi-author series that are all fairy tale retellings. We're the only classics one, so I'm very happy about this decision because we stand out a bit from the crowd. But it was specifically because I wanted Tor's story to be published, so because it's really amazing. Um,
That's awesome.
as for the second question, why? Yeah, I'm really excited. So I'm very proud of her. But as for the next question, I always get a little frustrated when people ask me that. In my opinion, all authors are retellers. There's only 7 basic plots. We're all retelling essentially the same stories over and over and over again. So I always feel like you're kind of splitting hairs there a little bit because we all do it to a certain extent.
For sure.
But I think for me, it's kind of like wish fulfillment because how many, I mean, everyone watches a movie and everyone watches or reads a book and thinks, I would have done this differently. I would have changed this. I would have tweaked this a little bit. And retellings is the only way you can do that without getting sued for copyright infringement. So you can take a story and you can change it and make it the way you want it to be. So it's very therapeutic in a sense because you get to finally fix a story the way you want it to be. And I am kind of an inherent fixer. When I see something in a story, it really bothers me when something's wrong or when something doesn't seem right to me. So I think to me, it's like a sense of repairing. It's like when you see like stories, especially are really under attack now more than ever. And to me, it's just a way of repairing what's been damaged kind of in stories. It's like, this story isn't quite, I don't think it's the way it should be. I want to fix it a little bit. I want to, or on the other side of the coin, like Beowulf, which didn't need any fixing. It's amazing the way it is. I love it so much. I just want to introduce more people to it. I want more people to know about Beowulf, and maybe they wouldn't have read the original text, but they might read this fantasy retelling. So for me, it's just a way of either fixing stories or introducing people to stories that you love. And I think everyone does it to an extent. So
Absolutely. No, I love that answer. And as you were talking about that, it just kind of reminded me. I was curious too. As you write, who you share your story with first. I remember when Janelle started writing. A lot of times we would be her first audience, and there was a lot of times that me and my brother and sister would offer our own corrections because she would be writing. Early in your process, it would be 10 pages at a time, and so we would say, oh, we want more. And Janelle would be like, well, there is no more yet. And so we were like, well, this is what should happen next. Or you know what, you should go back and change this guy's name. So I'm curious, do you have any sounding board in your family like that read your stories? And do they ever come back and say, oh, I should change this? And is that ever hard to hold on to your own story? Like, no, this is the way I want it to be.
yes, my siblings and I actually have a weekly writers group. So it's
right.
basically our sounding board. Every week we meet together and we'll pitch each other on our ideas. We'll work through problems. We'll brainstorm. So that is quite familiar to me. We do that all the time. They're my first sounding board. And they give me a lot of initial ideas and brainstorming. Have become very good at fighting for the integrity of our ideas after doing it we've been doing this for almost 20 years. So every
awesome.
week we fight with each other over our stories. So we've gotten pretty good at sort of sorting through like what will work, what won't work. And then of course I get to the developmental editing stage, which is my twin. Actually, she's an incredibly good developmental editor, and she's the only one I really trust to do that. So she is very impartial. She's, instead of getting so excited about like, I really like this idea better than your idea, she's really good at just saying like, this, I know what you were trying to do and this is how you can make it better. So yeah. So and then brainstorming stage, it's a free for all every week because everyone tries to try to do this, do that. But we've become very good at learning when to like, okay, this is your story, you do it your way, but here's some ideas.
Do you guys, either of you, do you ever have times where, whether it's family or somebody else, where you have an idea in the story that somebody might have a different idea that maybe at first, there's that knee jerk, like defensive, no, I like it this way, where maybe you come around later and say, you know what, like the way that changes the story, or when I actually think through that idea, like, yeah, I like that, and you go with that other idea instead?
Maybe for some of my other siblings, but for me, I'm a very easygoing writer. Like I'm not really attached to a lot of things. If someone has a better idea, it's like that's a better idea. I'm gonna do that right away. I'm very laid back in that respect. And even my developmental edits, I'm very she's right. I need to rip that part out entirely. I'm just gonna cut this entire POV. So I'm very dispassionate, I suppose, for a writer. So maybe some of my other siblings, but perhaps a little bit more so knee-jerk reactions, but me not so much.
Right on, right on. Janelle, do you ever find that? I'm sure I don't know what you would call that process, where it's more like content editing, to where I just think back to like working with Evan on certain like video projects where he would come back and say, I don't really like this edit. And I would get a little bit like almost offended, but then I'd take the advice and I'd, sit on it and be like, you know what, this idea makes it better.
I think for me, it was a lot easier to get defensive early on because
Yeah.
it was so new and it was so like, this is my heart on the page, and this is my heart. And
Yeah.
you're saying it's not good. And whereas now, like, I feel like I've developed a better, like a thicker skin and ability to say, yes, that's better, yes, that needs to happen, but also the ability to say, no, I like it this way. I'm going to spell sulfur the British way because it's better. And I'm an indie author, so I can, so from every stage, the developmental editing stage, and I only have one developmental editor that I trust as well, just kind of that, like, and there are times, yes, there are moments still even where I'll get back notes, and like on book 4 of Turum Archive, book 3, I got like very few notes, and he was like, this is the best thing you've ever written. And I was thinking, oh goodness, I've arrived, I'm good at this. And then book 4, he responded and said, every character that I liked in book 3 is not in book 4. And I was like, but they're all there. so something had gotten lost in translation. But yeah, so
if you just change all of this, it'll be better.
It just gestured at all of me. So yes,
Right.
it was a little bit, but it's a process. I feel like there's always I sometimes do need to like just kind of step back and take the notes and sulk for a little bit, and then I can move forward and go, okay, but you're right, and yes, this would be better. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, Allison, tell me about the collaboration side of this most recent project. You said you had been involved in one before and really enjoyed it. What about the process do you enjoy? And just tell me a little bit about what that's like, collaborating with other authors. Where are the lines between this is my part in this project and where the collaboration begins and continues on?
Well, as I'm one of those rare unicorns, I'm an extroverted writer. So for me, the more people involved, the better. I'm just happiest when there's a big crowd. So I don't like the lonely side of writing. I don't like being up in my room all by myself and just writing all alone. That's a terrible thing. So if I can do it with as many people as involved as possible, it's wonderful. And I just I really love teams. I love writing about teams. I love being a part of a team because teams are always better than the individual. And this collaboration, everyone like Janelle has been absolutely amazing. Like I don't know what I would have done without Janelle in this collaboration. And everyone has brought so much to the table. It's really been a collaboration. There's been a few points where I've had to make like command decisions and that kind of thing because someone had to make some sort of tough decision at one point down the road or something. But for the most
Every
part,
ship needs a captain.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like someone is going to make the bad, mean decision or some on some sort of topic. But for the most part, it's been very collaborative, and everyone has different strengths. Everyone has different areas of expertise. Some of us are just starting out. Some of us have been in this for a while. Some of us have been in it for a very long time. So it's wonderful because we've all learned so much from each other. But I think I was almost about ready to give up indie publishing before the first multi-author series, I was so tired of doing everything by myself. Like just hated the whole lifestyle of just trying to figure it all out on my own and just doing everything on my own. And then I realized, oh, I can be part of a team and have this really awesome writing group that we're talking through every single step of the process. And I just kind of came back to life and I thought, I want to do this again. So hence a Classic Retold was born.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What so tell us about the Classic Retold. When are the stories coming out? How can people find them? What's the rollout process?
So starting on September 15th, right, and then every week from that point. So mine will come out on September 15th, and then it'll be every Friday after that for 9 weeks. So I think the last one comes out in November 10th, I believe is the last one. So from September 15th to November 10th, one every week, every Friday.
Awesome.
And they are all available. Oh, I'm sorry, Janelle.
No, you're about to answer the question I was going to ask. Was where can people find them?
Yes, they are available on Amazon. So some of them, they're all going to be in paperback and ebook and in Kindle Unlimited for people who have subscriptions. Some of them will also be available as audiobooks and hardcovers. Mine will be available in audiobook and hardcover. And you can also find out more on our website, www.classicretold.com.
And where can people find you and follow you around the internet? I want to grab uno momento. I was going to have these closer, but Allison has written The Reluctant Godfather, and it's so cute.
Thank you.
This is the part of the multi-author series of Villains Ever After. The not available as
not
this
quite
moment, but I
would me to see someone else holding my book. So you guys, I can be found at my website, Allison Tebo author.com, and I also have quarterly newsletter that can be found at my website. And the best place to find me on social media is Instagram, also at Allison Tebo
nice
author.
And simple.
Yes.
Well,
I like straightforward handles.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks for coming on our show, Allison. We're about to run out of time.
Thank you so much.
So I don't want to push it too far. Grant, did you have anything else?
No, I was just gonna say that's awesome, and I'm excited to see this series come out. And yeah, thank you for coming on and talking about it. It's one of the things we always talk about growing up when our dad used to go to Blockbuster or Video Images, and you'd spend hours perusing. You'd be looking for a movie that you could watch as a family, and so one of the things we want to do is we want to find those for ourselves, for our families, and so it's really awesome to get to talk to you about this, and I'm excited about you guys getting to release these stories.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this platform. It's very much needed. It's hard to find good stories out there, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on with us, and you, dear listener, thank you for joining us and coming in out of the storm for just a little while.